That is a you problem. Even though they made the decision to abort the plans, you being upset is a you decision, is you problem. We have the power to decide, okay, yes, that person did something I was not favorable or is not favorable to me, but it is my responsibility to act after that and to act in response to that. And then the question is, are you going to be reactive, or are you going to establish an emotional autonomy and then move forward from there? So moving forward with no expectation would say, this is the reality, this is the truth. I need to communicate now to this person that they either crossed a boundary or I feel disrespected or dishonored or whatever, but I'm not going to get caught up in the fact that they said they're going to do one thing and did another. I'm not going to scold them for that, and I'm not going to use that as the root and the pillar of the conversation that is to be had. Hello, lovely people, and welcome. It's been a long time coming that I wanted to create a podcast, so here it is. We're going to try and commit to doing this on the regular. Made myself a little misto here. Okay, so today I want to talk to you guys about something that I feel like, for me, comes up very, very often, and I feel like it's near and dear to all of us, because all of us have to interact with other humans on the daily basis, and connections and community is an absolute essential for all humans. So what am I getting at here? Expectations and assumptions. Expectations and assumptions are the underlying root of many relationships, connections, platonic, intimate, or otherwise. And I think they have the capacity to erode a beautiful connection, a beautiful relationship, because most of us are pushing expectation, making assumptions, and allowing that to direct the connection and the path of our relationships. Now, I myself kind of adopted this no expectations, no assumptions mentality a few years ago after dating a woman who kind of showed me this, allowed me to practice a kind of love that didn't involve expectations or assumptions. Now, I'm not saying that you can't rely on someone by not having any expectations or assumptions, or can't expect things from them. Let me explain the practice and we can go from there. So, relinquishing expectation. This is not a means to have no belief or faith in anyone. It's not a means to just say, I don't think you're going to do anything for me. And of course, in relationships, especially romantic ones, or when you're building a partnership with someone, you have to be able to sacrifice. But at the same time, I think as a self-love practice, we have to learn to relinquish our expectations. And what I mean by that is not getting caught up in what someone said they were going to do, but looking at what they are doing instead, and not allowing the semantics of what they said they're going to do get in the way of what they're actually doing. As an example, your significant other says that you're going to go for dinner, and they bail out for some reason. Now, if you had plans and they bail out, this is unfortunate, and I'm sure I believe there's reason to be upset, and it's something you can talk about. But relinquishing in adopting the practice of relinquishing expectation looks something like this. The emotions of anger or disappointment come up. Sit with yourself and come to realize that that is a you problem. Even though they made the decision to abort the plans, you being upset is a you decision, is you problem. We have the power to decide, okay, yes, that person did something I was not favorable or is not favorable to me, but it is my responsibility to act after that and to act in response to that. And then the question is, are you going to be reactive, or are you going to establish an emotional autonomy and then move forward from there? So moving forward with no expectation would say, this is the reality, this is the truth. I need to communicate now to this person that they either crossed a boundary or I feel disrespected or dishonored or whatever, but I'm not going to get caught up in the fact that they said they're going to do one thing and did another. I'm not going to scold them for that, and I'm not going to use that as the root and the pillar of the conversation that is to be had. So I hope that's clear. This can be related also to more negative situations. Like a common one is when people are they are made to feel like what is an example? Sorry guys. So someone, for example, insults you or does something to truly hurt you. And this is a very, very difficult one, because if someone goes out of their way to, or seemingly so, goes out of their way to blatantly insult you or blatantly hurt you, you don't know for sure. That is an assumption. But the expectation is to say that that person did that on purpose, or they did it intentionally. And this is something that you just don't know for sure. You have no idea what's going on in their lives, what's going on in their current flow. So let me just make a correction there. That is a problem with assumption. And assumption is probably even more subtle and nuanced than expectation, because for coming back to the insulting example, someone insults you or does something, our immediate reaction is to take it personally. Especially if it's someone we don't know. The ego is bidirectional, meaning it can pull you into a dark place, or it can uplift you into a manic kind of like over confident place. And people forget that, especially the going down. So it's an expression of the ego to take something personally and be like, that person wanted to hurt me, and therefore I get to point the finger at them, and I get to blame them, and I get to, get mad at them. This makes us feel good. It's like downward comparison. Downward or upward comparison are both vehicles for the ego. And the reality of it is, the person most likely did not do that personally. And even if they did it to hurt you, the truth of that is, the layers deep beyond beyond the idea that they wanted to hurt you, is that they wanted to hurt themselves. When you go out of your way to hurt someone emotionally, physically, you're only displaying your own pain. You're only displaying your own traumas and your own demons that you have not settled with, that you have not integrated, and that you have not welcomed. So that is why when someone does something to you that is hurtful, or they're lashing out, the response is not to assume they are doing it in malice or they were doing it personally. If you do that, you just have one ego battling against the next, and nothing gets done. There's no progress, there's no mindfulness, there's no awareness to the situation. It's just two egos going at it. Conversely, if you are to not react, number one, to establish some emotional autonomy, which is acquired through meditation practices, breathwork practices, stillness practices, where you have a chance to separate, to gain some space from your emotional reactive self and who you truly are, the silent observer viewing everything. From it's like, the example is you're watching a movie, and don't identify with the show. What's happening in the show is not what's happening with you. It's not you. So, the emotions arise, establish some emotional autonomy, some space, and then decide to either not interact with the person, or if you do decide to interact with the person, do so in a loving and receptive way. And this segues into the next stage that I like to talk about. Continue with the example if someone does something offensive or hurtful to you. Once you have witnessed the emotions, not reacted, established emotional autonomy, the next step would be to not make it about them, but to make it about you. Because, again, it's a you problem. The way they made you feel is something that you have to own. It's something that you have to be autonomous in, and you have to find sovereignty in. Meaning that going to them and saying, instead of saying like, you're bad because you made me feel this way, another approach is, the way that you're communicating to me or what you did there made me feel like this. And I'm not sure what your intention with that is, but I would like you to clarify. I want to know where you're coming from so I can better understand. I don't want to assume what you did was in a poor heart or in a aggressive way. And this opens up so many possibilities for communication, so many possibilities for understanding to occur. Because once you take that step in assuming that they're being hurtful, then they're hurt. And then they assume that you're trying to hurt them. And then, like I said, the two egos are bashing heads and nothing actually gets done. I can recall when I was married, so many of our fights and discussions were just ego against ego. We weren't getting anywhere. We were just, common verbiage was, well, I remember that time you said this, I remember that time you said that, and it's just bringing up what the person said as a means to attack them, as a means to make them feel bad, as a means to win. And this is funny because, going on the tangent of marriages, a marriage is like an infinite game, meaning that it should continue on and on and on and on. And in order for an infinite game to go on, there needs to be established rules and there needs to be active participants. And an infinite game has only a winner if both are winning. Everyone has to be winning. Marriage is an example of that. So you can't have one person win and the other person lose. If one person wins, the other person wins. If one person loses, then everyone loses. And there's a lot of situations like that in life. There's finite games and infinite games. And I think a lot of people are applying the finite game rules to infinite games, marriage being one of them, or relationships. Yeah, so this is a difficult practice, but it's one that will allow so much love to bloom in your life, and it's why I'm so passionate about sharing it and why I talk about it. And another reason I talk about it is because it comes up so much. One of the things I love about my community, my family, the family that I chose, my friends and my tribe, is that we come to each other in times of vulnerability and we come to each other in need of counsel. And one of the things I hear very often is what we're talking about, so-and-so said this is how they made me feel, this is what they meant, this is where they're coming from. And often I ask as a reminder, did they say those things? Do you know those things for sure? And a lot of the time, we don't. A lot of the time, what we talk about other friends or lovers is a mixture of what they said and what we think. And that gets alchemized into this reality, which we think is real, but is actually just a figment of our imagination, is an illusion. Making assumptions is such a slippery slope, and it may seem redundant and it may seem almost eye roll worthy, like, oh my god, is this person going to ask this again? But you have to take the approach of meeting someone every day as a new person. You can't assume just that you know them, and that's beautiful. That can seem like a bad thing, like getting to know someone and being like, I know this person so well, I can just predict what they're going to do, and I know what they love, and I'm sure of course that happens when you develop a relationship and a connection. You get to understand someone and you can predict, and know certain aspects of them. But giving them the opportunity to grow and breathe and evolve is an intimate thing. For me, that's what trust is. Trust to me is not an agreement that says I will not hurt you, because pain is unavoidable. Suffering is really just the inability to see that pain is unavoidable and accepting that. And if you place that on a relationship, if you understand that philosophy in your relationship, you know that you can't prevent the other person from pain, you can't prevent yourself from hurting the person, at least consciously. So what I mean by that is, as individuals and as humans, we have dreams and aspirations and just intuitions and things that we have to honor in ourselves. And sometimes that honoring of those actions may bring up insecurity or pain in our partners. A common theme, I mean, for me is like I, at least right now, am not practicing monogamy, and having open relationships or a polyamorous way of dating and connecting can be triggering for people. But I see my responsibility or my way of providing trust in a relationship is, instead of saying I will not hurt you, it is saying I will always present myself honestly, and I will always receive you honestly. I want to give you my truth, and I want to receive your truth. It is a practice of compassion as opposed to coddling. Shout out to Aubrey Marcus. So when you're compassionate, you want to receive the person's truth. You want to work with them to understand what it is that they need to feel fulfilled, what are the things they want to explore, how is it that they want to expand, and what is calling at them. And then working with them, understanding that, like, okay, babe, I know this is incredibly important to you, and I can't hold you back from doing what you love. So even though it makes me insecure, I want to know that I'm fully supporting you in this, and when things come up, I'll just let you know and we can work through them together. As opposed to, you can't do that because it hurts me and I can't handle that. Of course, there's nuance and there's a spectrum, and this is something that you can decide for yourself in your relationships. Like, you know, if it's just too much for your partner to handle a certain thing, you know, that's something you guys have to communicate and chat about. But I think it's really important to try and adopt trust as a mentality of offering and receiving truth, as opposed to a mentality of I won't ever hurt you and you're mine and I'll never let you go. It's like liberation versus possession. Possession says, don't hurt me, I'm yours, validate me through your love. And then the liberating standpoint says, I'm validated already. I'm just here to share this experience with you, to create common goals, and to create a container where we can build as individuals. So I think that's something really important as well, is to not combine and see the love and relationship you have as one thing, not identifying your worth and your validation through the expression of the relationship. You have to see yourself as an individual. You have to see yourself as an individual expression, and then create space and time and sacrifice and all those things to create a container for the relationship. And seeing that as outside of yourself, in order to continuously practice self-love, and then in order to not identify with the ebbs and flows of the relationship. Because the relationship will go poorly at some points and it'll go very, very well at some points. And if you decide to identify with that wave, then you're just going along for the ride. It's the same thing as your passions and your jobs and your vocations. Like, these are just expressions of your already residing worthiness. So associating yourself to them completely leaves you at the risk for great, great highs, but also great, great lows. So this is a bit of a shorter episode, but I want to leave these episodes giving you guys some actionable items. So leaving you with everything said, how you can practice and endorse a way of living that coincides with no expectations, no assumptions, is always coming back to your own internal state. So that's why I really promote practices of self-reflection and meditation and journaling, so that you can understand and see the difference between your emotional state and who you are. One of the most powerful things is questioning your bias and understanding that almost everything that you think about someone is an assumption. So before making an action and before assuming that someone is doing something at a personal level, take a moment to reflect. With the expectations, I think this is a process of really writing down what your needs are in regards to a platonic and romantic relationship. So understanding what you need to feel loved, and then be willing to communicate that to your loved ones, your partners, and your friends. So I hope that's very helpful. I appreciate you guys for tuning in for this shorter podcast and YouTube video. I'll be having more of these episodes coming up, little rants, some longer, some shorter, and eventually I'll be having guests that I'll be speaking with, so stay tuned. So we'll leave it there. All the best. Much love. Peace out.